Hey guys, welcome back to Creative Restorations. My name is Doug Giles. As you can see, things are a little bit different. Upgrading some equipment around here. Got a new microphone, headphones, the recorder. Well, I've been using the same recorder for a little while, but decided it's time to reinvest in my YouTube channel, right? So we're going to do this one a little bit different. I'm still testing out the waters here to figure out what's best and what you guys like and what I get the best response out of you guys with. So there's probably only a couple of different reasons why you're on this channel and watching this particular video. Either you got to the condensed version of how to install a pool table and you wanted something that was a bit more in-depth, which that's exactly what this video is going to be. Or you got to this one first and, you want the condensed version. You just want to see, kind of how it's done. Alright, so just like I did with the other video, I'm going to leave a link below so that you can see the shorter version of how to install a pool table. If you happen to be a pool table mechanic or an aspiring pool table mechanic, this video should do quite well for you. There's a lot of good information I'm going to share here. There's probably some things that I want to talk about while there's some dead time, because believe me, there's going to be a lot of dead time in this video. I'm telling you, the whole thing is unedited. This is start to finish. Now, there's one break in there. You might see a jump cut. It's not actually a jump cut. My helper was bringing the camera over, and he accidentally hit the button to stop recording, but he immediately turned it right back on. So, at most you may lose, 5 seconds of the install on this table. So there's a lot we're going to cover on this. There's a lot of little tips and tricks that I'm going to tell you about in this video that I did not put in the other video. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, I hope you guys are ready, because we're in it for the long haul now. This is going to take quite a while. Go grab yourself a cup of coffee, go grab a Coke, and if you're watching this video, I expect you to watch the whole thing all the way through. Because if you don't want to watch it all the way through, we've got the condensed version that, I'm going to put the link down below for the condensed version. You guys watch that one if you don't want to stick around for this whole video. Alright. One thing that's very, very important, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking about installing a pool table or working on a car or anything, what's really, really important is to separate all of your hardware. Go through the entire batch of hardware, the entire pile of hardware there, and start separating everything out and put your pieces of hardware together. This will make it much, much easier to determine what parts go where. So don't know if you saw or not that pile that I have right there started right above my right hand. That's actually all the bolts for the corners of the frame. And as I'm going through and I'm pulling out all the hardware, I'm counting it. Now, been doing pool tables long enough, at least most of the tables that I ever run across, I know all the nuts, bolts, and screws. I know how many of them I'm supposed to have. And like these threaded rods that go into the rails, I know I'm supposed to have 18 of them. I've got 6 rails. There's 3 rail bolts a piece. So I'm supposed to have 18 of those. Likewise, I'm supposed to have another 18 crown washers, and I'm supposed to have another 18 nuts to go on those threaded rods, the rail bolts, whatever you want to call them. For slate screws, I got 3 pieces of slate, 4 screws, at least on this particular Brunswick. Got 4 screws per rail bolt, or per piece of slate. That gives me 12 of those. So as I'm pulling them out, I'm counting those up, make sure I have 12 of those. Set those off to the side. The machine screws that they give me for the rail, or for the legs, I've got 3 per corner, 4 corners, so that's 12 of those. I know I need to count out 12 of those. So, it's very important to, not only separate all of your hardware, but to make sure that you have the correct amount of hardware for the whole table. Now, when we disassembled this table, every single piece of hardware went into that Ziploc bag. So I know that all of the hardware is there, but it never hurts to count up all your hardware as you're sorting it out. Because even if it's all there, it'll help you to figure out if it's been a few days or a few weeks, or in some instances you might disassemble your table, put it off into storage. It might be months before you get back to doing your table. So it's a really good idea to count out your hardware, separate it all out. That way, when you go to reassemble the table, especially if it's a long time afterwards, knowing how many of each part you have will help you determine where those nuts, bolts, and screws go. And I'll give you a good example here. The bolts that hold the leg brackets on are slightly shorter than the pocket bolts. Okay? So there's 4 corners, and there are 4 leg bracket bolts per corner. So that's a grand total of 16 of those. But yet pocket bolts, there are 6 pockets with 2 bolts each for those. So that's 12. Well, if I have one set of bolts that are longer than another, and I've got 16 that are slightly shorter than the other 12, well, I know that tells me immediately, well, I have 16 of these. I know that those do not go for the pockets. Conversely, if I have 12 longer ones, well, I know for a fact that those don't go for my leg brackets. And those bolts are very, very similar. I think there's only about 1/4 of an inch difference between the length of each one of them. So that's one way, like I said, to make sure that you end up getting the right hardware back in the right holes. I hope you guys like the sound of my voice, because, like I said, we're going to be at this for a little while. We're 5 minutes into this build, and we've got a whole hour and 40 minutes. So we got an hour and 35 minutes together. During some of the parts on this, I think I'll put some background music. And don't say I didn't warn you, this is boring, okay? Part of this is boring. You're going to have gaps in between here where David and I go off to go get the slate for the pool table. And, takes several minutes. We're in between, getting the first piece and getting the second piece. Because let's face it, these slates are heavy. You get kind of winded, especially when you get to be my age. It gets tiresome. I'm not out there doing it at 20 years old anymore. I wish I was 20 again. In some regards. I really wouldn't trade going back to being 20. Would you? Alright, so what is it that I have in my hand there now? I'm separating out. I got 4 bolts there for the legs. Those are the machine screws also for the legs. Putting the final washers on for the frame end miters. That's the little caps. Once the frame itself is put back together, there's a cap that covers up those brackets. So we get all of those separated out, and then I'm going to start laying out 2 bolts with washers and nuts on each of the 4 corners for the frame. And then we can get to assembling. Now, it's pretty important that you keep your pieces of your frame flat on the ground. There is a bit of movement that's allowed. When you go to put the bolts in, the two panels will float back and forth. Well, you want to make sure that the very top edge of the table is flat across there. Otherwise, if one panel is raised above the other, you'll end up with a high spot on the slate later on down the road. So make sure that your panels are at the exact same height. So I'm putting those corner bolts in. David's giving me a hand. Fortunately, I'm really glad our customers, we were very fortunate with this table that both the seller and the buyer were willing to let us, actually record what it was we were doing. I think I was talking with the customer there. Don't know what I'm explaining to them, but I'm explaining something. And, I really wish that we could have left the actual audio from the recording. I wish we could have left that because, there was a lot of stuff that I was talking about and how I interact with customers and everything. Unfortunately, they had a radio. They had some contractors there that were doing work on their house, and they had the radio going in the background. And I know perfectly good and well I would end up getting a YouTube strike, copyright strike for music if I allowed that to play in the background. So, unfortunately, guys, when that happens, well, you're stuck with listening to me, and you get to listen to free YouTube music from the YouTube audio library. Say hi, David. David's probably one of the best helpers I think I've ever had doing pool tables. He's very, very conscientious, and I don't think although we kind of get into it every once in a while when we're on our way to a job, or we'll start talking philosophy, maybe some politics or whatever, and we'll get into it a little bit. But I tell you, when it comes to actually working on tables, he's over the years he's learned quite a bit from me. He's one of the few helpers that I have that I actually don't have a problem with him interacting with my customers and talking with my customers. And that's it's really sad that there aren't what's really sad is that you hire some guys and you expect them to be a bit more professional. And look, we're service guys. It's not like we're CEOs of major corporations or anything like that. But I mean, you got to have at least a little bit of confidence that your help can interact with your customers without making themselves look like idiots, and more importantly, making me and making our business, making us sound like we don't know what we're talking about. But David has learned a lot over the years, and for that I'm very grateful. He's one of the few guys I can just tell him, look, David, I need you to do such and such, and no problem whatsoever. I never hear any back talk from him or anything like that. It's like we both understand our roles and what we both need to do. there are some times where I wish he didn't need as much direction, but there's other times where he needs absolutely no direction whatsoever. He just knows exactly what needs to be done, and he gets in there and does it. But on the same hand, like I said, if there's something that I need done, he's right there, and never hear a word from him. He just does it. Now at this point, I'm going in, now that the frame itself is pretty much assembled. I'm going in and I'm putting in the leg brackets, getting those tightened down, and all of this will help to square up the frame of the table as well. So David's going to go in just a minute. Once he gets all the bolts started, he'll go in from the side and get those tightened down. And right at the moment, I don't bother putting those corner miters on, the little covers for the corners of the table. I don't put those on just yet. I'm going to put those on a little bit later after we've got the legs installed. So David goes through and he'll tighten everything up, and he's going to go grab me some bolts so that I can put those the leg brackets on. Putting together a pool table is really pretty simple if you know the correct order. You can't skip any steps. There is an order to how they go back together. You can change it up maybe a little bit, like your cross beams there, your slate beams, frame beams, whatever you want to call them. They can go on after the legs, before the legs. It really doesn't matter. Your brackets for them, they can go on before or after. The corners for the frame, those can go on before or after you're done with the legs. But you do have to put them on after the frame is put together. You do have to put them on before the slate goes on. What you do in between, that's fine. And there's a few parts of doing a table that are like that, where it really just doesn't matter what order you do it in, but the major parts of the operation you do. There is an order to it. So once we've got our frame secured, we'll put in our cross beams. David will go ahead and put the bolts in, and I'll come back behind him and tighten those up. This portion of the job is really not all that technical. Where it starts getting technical is obviously with leveling and with putting on the cloth. Now, this particular customer opted not to replace the cloth, so we've put the existing cloth back on, which sometimes presents additional challenges, sometimes doesn't. It really just depends on how old the cloth is. Now, this particular cloth that we put back on this table, it was over 10 years old. It was actually about 13 years old, so it was well past its time to be replaced. But, the customer said, no, let's just go ahead and put it back on. And, my philosophy is, you're the boss, you're the customer, and I don't care if you want me to put a bed sheet back on the table. I'll do it, because that's what you're paying me to do. However, it's my job as a professional to tell you and to let you know that, these are what my recommendations are. Now, David's going ahead now, and he's putting the legs on, and all we do to put the legs on at this point is just lift up one end of the table, put a rail bolt or put a leg bolt in. We're not tightening it down at all. This is just so that the leg cannot fall back out or slip back out from underneath the table when we put the other side on. David's going to do one side, he'll go around and he'll put the other side on while I hold the table for him, hold the frame up. And you can see that, I mean, the legs are they're not tightened down on there at all. But there's a reason for it. And that's because once we get the entire table up on legs, well, you'll see. I'll show you in a minute. So David's going to get the other two legs on. And again, all he's doing is just putting one leg bolt in. All right, there you go, David. So the next thing that we're going to do, he's got the he just passed off the sheet metal screws to me, and then we'll twist the legs. And since this is this is not a brand new install, what we're doing is we're lining up all of the holes for those sheet metal screws where we took them out before. We're going to put them right back in those exact same holes. So you twist the leg around until it lines up with those holes, and then we take our impact and put those screws down. And that'll hold the leg in place. It's in its correct position. It's in the exact same position that it was in when it was in the previous owner's house. David's taking his time and carefully lining that up. And I'll come back behind him. I'll pop those sheet metal screws in and go ahead and tighten those down. And then I'll pass off the rest of those sheet metal screws to David. Let him get the other ones lined up in there. Get them started. And then I go back in on the other side and I'll tighten down the leg bolts themselves. Alright, so we got that. We're done with the 5/16. Put the 1/2 inch back on and tighten up the leg bolts. Alright, there we go. So next thing, we're going to grab the tape measure. And first thing I want to do is I want to get the center of our table. So David's going to get me a scratch awl. You can use a scratch awl, you can use a Sharpie, you can use an ink pen, doesn't really matter. You just need something you can put a mark on the frame of the table, on the top. I'm going to measure across to see exactly how wide the table is, and I'm going to put a mark. And you'll see, get a better shot of that at the other end. So that's all I'm doing, is marking the center of the table. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to measure the room itself. We'll measure the room, the whole overall width of the room, figure out what half of it is. And sometimes it takes me a moment to do the math in my head. And then we'll take half of the distance of the room itself. and put the table at that mark. And typically we're going to, square it off to one wall or another. We're not going to try, like we wouldn't do, let's say we needed 120 inches to the center of the table. We wouldn't do 120 inches off of one wall and then go to the opposing wall and measure off. It's just not the way it's done. You want to measure off of one wall and stick with that one wall. And I'll go back and forth, between one end of the table and the other end, because every time you move the head of the table, the foot seems as though it wants to move. And you go back and you adjust the foot, the head moves. So you do it a few times until they both equal exactly the same. And we measure off of the wall, back wall. I think we're gonna, in a situation like this, we just measure. Let's see, do we measure the overall length of the room? Or do we just figure out the difference between two walls? I think we figured out the difference between the two walls. Pull the table back. Now, in pulling it back like that, we've kind of just changed where the table's set, so we'll go back and check it again. Bump it back into alignment, go check the other end. And again, do this several times, because once the slate is on top of that table, you're not getting it back up again. I think we're going to check it one last time just to be on the safe side. And we're good. So it's at this point, we'll put the table exactly, I'll put the table exactly where I think it should go. Usually I don't even bother asking the customer if that's where they want the table for at this point. We'll put it where we think it should go and then call the customer in before we start trying to level the table or anything like that. And, we'll ask the customer if that's where they want it. And if they want us to cheat it over in one direction or another, we can go ahead and do that at this point. The only thing that we've done at this point up until now has been just assemble the frame and get it, centered in the room. So in this particular case, the customer was perfectly fine where we put the table. So now we move on to leveling. Now, for leveling the frame, I use carpenter's levels. I use two different carpenter's levels, a 4-foot and a 2-foot. And this is just rough in. For leveling the slates, I do not use a carpenter's level. I use a machinist's level. But for roughing in the frame, and I can't stress how important it is to level the frame properly. It's like building a house. If you start off with a wonky frame, if your house is not on a level foundation, nothing else is going to come out level either. So, it's not like we want an MC Escher house here. We don't want an MC Escher pool table. So you start off with a level frame where everything is leveled out, and it's like everything goes better from that point on. So when we go to put the slates on, if the frame is level, it's that much less work we have to do. So before we go ahead and level out the table, we'll put our corner miters on for the frame. And 4 of those. 2 more corner miters to go. Now, I'm warning you guys that this is the unedited version. I know we're already, let's see, how far are we? We're 28 minutes into this already. And there are some parts here where there's going to be nothing going on. Feel free to skip ahead. You know, once we're done leveling the table, feel free to skip ahead to where we start putting the slates on. So I go in and first thing I want to do is I want to level out my length of the table, the length of the frame, okay? And I'll take that 4-foot level and I'll read it on one side of the table, going from head to toe, and usually I'll pick up that level and bring it over to the other side to make sure that, you know, if one leg is dropped down further than another, you know, we can take care of that at that point. So I'll check my level there. I think we're fairly decent, or did we need another one? And by the way, I'm using here just shims from Home Depot. These are actually floor samples. Linoleum or you know, synthetic tile samples that I get from Home Depot. They're free. Can't beat free. That's what I'm showing you here. These are just, you know, floor samples from Home Depot. Go in and get a whole bunch of them, stick them in a box, and walk on out, and they won't say a word. All right, so we've got our length taken care of. And again, check one end of the table, check the other end of the table. If there is any adjustment that needs to be made, now's the time to do it. Now, one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to ever get into a situation where you're chasing the level. Now, what I mean by that, here's what I mean. Let's say you put your 4-foot level running from head to foot on one side of the table and it reads perfectly fine. And you put it over on the other side and it reads perfectly fine. It reads level. And then you take your 2-foot level and you put it on the head and it reads level. But then you go to the foot and it's unlevel. Well, you can spend forever going around and around and around the table. So if you were to bring up that one corner that is showing low, if you try to bring that up, your side will now not be level. So in a sense, what you can continue doing is going around in a circle, trying to chase making the level right. So you reach a point where if you just do the front, the two sides, okay, from head to foot, you know, get your head, your two sides level from head to foot, and then, you know, if you get one side that's perfectly level, stop right there, and take care of the rest of it with the slate. All right, here's that point where we really don't have much going on. David and I are moving a few things out of the way to make sure we don't trip as we're coming in with the slates. And it's going to be a few minutes here. Might be 3 or 4 minutes that we step outside, get the truck prepped, and start getting the slate out. But so we'll take the minute here and tell you, you know, you don't ever want to get into that situation where you're chasing that level, that bubble on the level all the way around the table, because it's nonstop. You won't stop. you have to reach the point where you say, okay, I've got 3 sides perfectly level. I've got 2 sides perfectly level and 1 end perfectly level, but the other end isn't level. You stop right there. Go ahead and put your 3 slates on top, and then you start taking care of making it level from that point using the slates and using the wedges. So you see David in the background now. I don't believe he brought the rails in for the table. I think they were still inside the truck. So he's laying out a moving blanket on the floor in the opposing room so he can lay out the rails in there. So it's going to be a few minutes here before we come back. So I'll ask you guys, since you're watching right now and you're sitting here just looking at a frame of a table, maybe you can take this moment to answer a question for me. I have been thinking about doing a video where we discuss the different types of pool table cloth. Don't know. I've got a few things I could say about it, make a video out of it and possibly talk with somebody about pool table cloth. Well, you guys could talk to me about it. Anyway, there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and a lot of people don't know the differences between cloth, and I'm thinking about doing a video on that. So, if that's something you guys would like to see, let me know in the comments below. And if there's any other videos that I could discuss, that I could do, give me some suggestions down below. I don't think I'm going to run out of things to say about pool tables. After 30 years, you kind of see a lot with pool tables. One buddy of mine that's up in Clay Center, Kansas, he's a pool table technician. He's also a pool table restorer. On his website, he's got what he calls the Hall of Shame. And what that is a lot of antique pool tables that people have just done some goofy things to. Antique tables from the 1800s that they've swapped out and put a modern top on. Really gorgeous tables what would be a gorgeous table. And people have put everything from vinyl on them to, upholstering them with leather and I mean, just nasty looking things. One guy, I think I saw one of his pictures on there. He had a 1800s, 1880s Brunswick table that they had put, I want to say AstroTurf or, like that fake grass. Yeah, they stapled fake grass all around the table. All right, so here we come with the first slate. Get that one in, get it in place, and we're not trying to bolt anything down right at the moment with that with the slates. It's just not the time. We want to get all 3 slates in first and get them in their relative position. And usually there's going to be an arch that's drawn on top of the table, on top of the slate. So it lets you know the proper orientation. Now, used to be back, some of the tables back in the 1970s and maybe a few of them back into the 80s. And I don't know if Brunswick still does it with their gold crown tables that they're making today, the gold crown 5s and 6s. I don't know if they're still doing it, but it used to be they would use what's called pinned slate. And what that was a metal dowel that extended from the side of the slate into the adjacent slate. And, there was really no way of getting it wrong because, like the middle slate would have dowels on one side of the slate and it would have holes on the other side of the slate. So, on your two end slates, you'd have one end slate that had holes and you'd have another end slate that had dowels. So you really couldn't mix it up. Well, in modern times, I guess they figured out you really don't need those dowels to help line up the slate. All you really need is an arch across there, and the dowels don't really do much. So I use, to get our slates in the right position, I actually use just a couple of large scratch awls, and I use them as drift pins. And David's now getting our machinist's level out and getting it ready. And then he's going to find the hole on his side with that scratch awl. Don't know what he's looking for. Don't know what he needs there, but he's getting our impact ready. And number 3 Phillips on there for us. So David's going to drop the dowel down into the slate hole there, the screw hole. May have to lift it up and look underneath and see exactly where the hole is. There he goes. And then you wiggle the scratch all around a little bit, and that actually kind of centers up your slate on that hole, so it's exactly right. And then you pull your scratch all out and test to make sure that your adjacent slate is actually going into the correct hole, that your screw holes are correctly aligned, and this one is. I mean, everything just lined up right back where it went. So once we've got everything lined up, we'll go around the table, throw our screws in the holes. Now you don't want to just immediately jump in and start screwing these things down. That's one thing you absolutely don't want to do, because then you'll be pulling them right back out. The slate is not level at this point. It's close because we got the frame leveled out, but it's not level. Now the machinist level is accurate enough that even a little bit of just a little piece of trash will make a difference. So David sweeps it off, and then I take and read the level from one slate to the next. And what I'm looking for here is to see which slate is high. So on this particular table, our two ends were high, but I had one end that was closer to the window over there that was higher than the other end. So that's our highest point of the table. And everything else is going to get leveled off to that point. So those two back screws, we screw those down, and then everything else, we're going to take our wooden wedges there, and these are just simple door wedges, door frame wedges, window wedges that you get from Home Depot. And David's going to give us a close-up of this. Forgive the camera shake. He's not the best cameraman in the world, but he does a pretty good job. So as you can see, the end there that I put the screws down, that I screwed those screws down, that's our high end. The bubble is leaning towards that side, so that's our high end. So I'm going to lift up and put a wedge in. You can see it right there. Then I'll take my tack hammer and start tapping it in. Now what I'm looking to do here is I'm looking to raise that slate higher. I want to bring it up a little high so that it's so that when I screw those screws down, I'm going to draw the whole slate down to the point where it's level. So I raise up the slate, the low end of the slate, I'm going to raise it up higher than level. and then use the screws to bring it back down to level. And that means that the screws are going to be tight. But this is also the reason why you don't just get on the table and get 8 buddies to move the table. It's because those screws are really in there to help with leveling the table. And if you pull up on them like that, not only are you taking a chance of breaking out the slate, and this is actually where you're putting those wedges. You're going in between the frame of the table and the slate itself. And David's doing the same thing there on his end. He's going to bring it up high and then screw it down to the point where you get back level. And we're at a little bit of an angle here, so that actually is level. And there we go, that's level. So the next thing that we're going to do, I'm going to pass off the camera to David and let him let him show what I'm doing here. Now, our middle slate is now low. Okay, so the slate there that I was just pointing out, our middle slate is low, so we're going to lift that up. And just like we went high before, so our middle slate is still low, and we drive it in, and just like we went higher before, we want to do the same thing here. So we want to raise that slate above the adjacent slate to the point where it's just above, just a little bit high, and then when we drive our screws down, it pulls it down tight, and we can level that off. And I use the pad of my finger to run back and forth to feel when that slate is precisely in line with each other. And David's going to do the exact same thing on his side. He's going to raise up. Raise up the slate, tap it in to the point where that slate is just a touch high. Then he's going to take the impact, drive the screw down, and you'll see that slate, well, if he moves his hand out of the way, you can actually see the slate pull down, and you run your finger across it to make sure that it's perfectly level across there. And then I'll switch up. He hands me over the level. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the middle slate. Now our middle slate is reading high on the left-hand side, on my side, to the left. So we're going to bring up the right side of the middle slate until it reads level. So we'll raise that side. Put a wedge underneath there. And we're looking to make sure that we come up to the point where the level is showing that right side just a touch high. And then when we draw those screws down, we can draw it down to the slate being perfectly level. Sometimes we might want to, tap once the screw is all the way down, you can actually tap the wedge in a little bit more to get that last little bit. Now, that screw hole on the left side, right there by my finger, that's kind of acting like a pivot point. So when you raise up that right side, the left side drops down just a little. So we'll go back and we'll adjust that. And I mean, we're going up just ever so slight, tiny increments here. I mean, really, in all actuality, that little bit of a difference in the level, one hashtag or one mark on that level, you see the lines there. If it's moved over one notch from being perfectly centered, I don't even think that would make a difference with the ball roll. I don't think that the ball would drift, not one bit. But that doesn't mean we're going to skimp on it. We're still going to get it perfectly level. So those little bitty, when we bump that impact, I mean, it might be turning a 32nd of a turn, maybe a 16th of a turn at most. So that's how precise that machinist's level is. So again, just like we did with that middle slate, we're going to go to the end slate, our final slate, and again, do the exact same thing. Our middle slate now is going to be set a little bit higher. Might actually be able to see that little lip right there. And I'm going to raise it up. Squeeze our slates in to make sure, and then tap our wedge in until that end slate reads just or feels just a touch high. Bump down our screw until it comes out level, and then give our wedge a couple more little taps. And you can see David's over there feeling his at the same time that I'm doing it to make sure to see how much he's going to have to do his side. So then we'll go to the end, the very end. I'm going to put just a little bit. Tap it in till it reads just a touch high. And screw it down. Now this is a good point where you go back to the seams. When you get that last one in, you go back and feel the seams, both seams. Make sure nothing has changed, nothing has moved on you or anything like that. And if nothing's changed, then you're good to go. Move on to the next step. Now, occasionally you might have to get up underneath the table and right in the middle of the slates. Sometimes you might have to put a wedge in underneath there to bring the middle of the slate up. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But on this particular table, we didn't have to. But once all of that's done, just go around with your tack hammer and start breaking off your excess wedges that's sticking out. And I can't stress how important it is to keep the surface of the table clean. Once you've gotten to this point, really, really important to clean off the top of the table. Keep it clean. So David gets my Bondo ready for me. And I go through and I start sharpening my palette knife, getting any old Bondo off of it. And I'll even clean off the top of the table again. Like I said, it's important for that table to be clean. And then I'll even use the slate itself to help clean off that, take any burrs or anything like that from sanding, that palette knife, that putty knife. And if you see there on the corner of the table, David just put it up there a minute ago, that's Bondo. I just grabbed it. There's a lot of different things you can use for installing a pool table to, bridge the gap between the three slates. I personally prefer to use Bondo. I find it to be very stable. It doesn't really matter whether you're talking about extremely hot environments, cold environments. Bondo just happens to work very well. Some technicians like to use paraffin wax or beeswax. I don't particularly care for it, especially here in the Gulf South. We install tables in garages a lot of times, and it gets pretty hot. So I have seen it before where you'll end up with two lines going across the table. And it's always when somebody uses paraffin or beeswax, some of the oils that are in those waxes will leach up and migrate through the cloth, and you'll end up with a couple of oil slicks across your cloth, and it's really unsightly. So I personally don't use that. Now, this particular table that we're working on here, the last technician used plaster of Paris. Plaster of Paris is almost like using concrete. I don't like using plaster of Paris because the older it gets, the more dry it gets, the more brittle it gets, and eventually you'll end up with a pile of plaster of Paris and, across the table, and it breaks out. The vibrations and everything from playing on the table, racking the balls, breaking the balls and everything, it eventually ends up breaking out. So I don't like it. Another reason why I don't use either beeswax or paraffin wax is the only way that I know of that you can actually melt that stuff is by using a blowtorch. Usually what a technician will do is he'll take paraffin or beeswax and put it in a saucepan and, take a blowtorch and heat up the pan itself. Well, for me, that's introducing a fire, an open fire source in my customer's home. And, all it takes is for one little thing to go wrong. And, by the way, there's a brush, the Home Depot brush that I use, and I actually use that for cleaning off the tables as well. So anyway, going back to the beeswax and paraffin, I don't use it because it's a fire hazard. I don't like the idea of bringing fire into my customer's home. All it takes is one mistake, and all of a sudden you've set someone's house on fire. So I don't use that. So I'll check my phone here while we wait for Bondo to dry. And by the way, you may have just noticed that, I don't know, some of you guys may be saying, well, you leveled the table from head to toe. What about leveling it from side to side? Well, we're going to get to that. So as of this point right now, the table is perfectly level from head to toe. It is not, however, perfectly level. It's pretty close right now, but it's not perfectly level from side to side. So we'll give the Bondo a few minutes to dry. This is another one of those opportunities for you to skip ahead if you don't like watching paint dry, or in this case, Bondo. We pretty much just stand around doing nothing while we wait for Bondo to dry. It's a good opportunity to go outside and look at the world. It takes about 5 minutes for it to dry, depending on how hot you decide to mix up your Bondo. This is a good opportunity to go along and, sweep off the table. Just being very careful not to push that brush down into the Bondo. And if there isn't too thick of a coat of Bondo, and there never is, a lot of times we can actually get started with putting the cloth on and let the Bondo dry after the cloth is put on. It's a really good idea to shake out the cloth, make sure there's nothing on it. I'm going to inspect both sides, give it the once over. Now, I use a Senko staple gun. Now let's get a close-up of it. It's a Senko 10 millimeter or 3/8 crown staple. I go back and forth using 3/8 leg staples and 1/2-inch staples. It really all depends on what my supplier has at hand. Now, I had said this before, that this particular table, the customer wanted to reuse the 13-year-old cloth that was on it, although that was against my better judgment. And I actually would have, had it been my table, I would have replaced the cloth, but, this is what they wanted. They wanted us to put it back on. So my rule of thumb when I'm putting old cloth back on the table is I'm not going to attempt to stretch it any tighter than what it was when we pulled it off. Which, that's, if you try to stretch it any tighter, there's a real good chance that it's going to rip, especially the older the cloth is, and this is 13-year-old cloth. The older the cloth is, the more likely it is that it's going to rip on you. So if you just put it right back where it was, and there are fold lines where where the cloth folds around the slate and goes to the slate frame there, the part that you're going to staple to. There are folds there, so you can line all that back up. You've got holes there for your rail bolts. Line those back up. And typically I'm going to start on one side of the table, work from, start at the middle and work my way out. And again, lining up that fold over and lining up my rail bolts, my bolt holes. There I go again. I'm going to start from the middle of the side pocket, or start from the side pocket. I think David's going to come get the camera and come show you what I'm doing on that side. Smile for the camera, David. He doesn't smile much. So if you see, that's the fold I'm talking about. It leaves indentations, and we can line that right back up. But again, I'm not going to stretch any tighter than what it is, or any tighter than what it was when it was last installed. Oh, almost stapled myself there. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm lining up my my bolt holes, and then from there, go ahead and line up, pull that cloth right back to that fold. And you don't need to go crazy with the staples, okay? You're holding cloth down. You're not building a ship. You're not building the Eiffel Tower here. You're not building the pyramids. All you're doing is holding cloth down, okay? So you don't need to go crazy with putting staples in. So 2 rows of staples is, one right immediately next to each other. You're not accomplishing anything. You don't need that many staples. My thought process is, when I go to do a table, I'm always anticipating that I'm going to be the next guy to go back out to work on this table the next time. And, if I go crazy with the staples, that's that many more staples that I'm going to have to pull out. It's more work on me. Now, if you don't mind the extra work, well, fine, have at it. But, it really is a pain in the butt to try to remove 5,000 staples out of a table. It's not necessary. It's overkill. So we'll get our sides done, and we'll come back and we'll tackle one. Now this, I'm going to break my rule. Instead of starting at in the middle and working my way out, this time I'm going to start at the end, at one corner, go over to the other corner, line everything up. Now I do put a few extra staples in, you know, at the end of the cloth there by the pocket. But that's it. That's the only place I put extra staples. Again, same thing, you know, pull it down to the point where that fold over is tacked, you know, to where it lines up, and then just tack it into place. And look, you see the stapler that I'm using there, that Senko stapler. I'm going to leave a link down below. You know, if you're an aspiring pool table mechanic, I can tell you right now, that Senko stapler along with a compressor, that is a godsend, okay? I couldn't tell you how many manual staplers I have broken. I couldn't tell you how many electric staplers I have broken before I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to use pneumatic. Now, this is typically the way I do my pockets and come back and trim out all that excess. If I do, you know, on this particular table, I did, I think David's getting me a razor blade now. There you go, throw it to me. Yeah, on this particular table, I think I did stretch the cloth just a little bit in the pockets just to give myself a little bit extra material to work with there. Plus, in one of the pockets, the cloth itself, it had a little bit of a rip in it. Not a rip, but it had been, the balls had, you know, where the balls rebound right there in that, on the top edge of the slate. The balls had worn a hole right through it, so we pulled it down a little bit just so that it had fresh cloth there. But yeah, that pneumatic stapler, it really is a godsend. So you guys still with me? We're an hour and 5 minutes into this already, and we've still got another 37 minutes to go before we're done with this table. Now, an upcoming video that I want to do is going to be of me actually doing a full-blown recover. I've got a video up that I did in, you know, a little over a year ago where it was fast motion, where we recovered a table. It was a glue-down table, and I don't remember why I did that video that way. You know, I was just getting into YouTube. Well, that video's actually gotten close to 12,000 views now. It's actually my highest viewed video that I have. But I think there's probably a lot of you guys that are now coming to the channel that like to see something a little bit more substantial as it pertains to recovering a table. And I think I can provide that now. We earlier this past week we just did a Brunswick anniversary table from the 1950s. It was a model DC anniversary table, and I had actually thought about doing a video on that one as well. So, are there any particular tables that you guys would like to see me do the service work on? Don't say diamond. I don't typically do work on diamond tables, and there's a reason for it. It's not because I won't. It's just that the customers that have, or the people that own diamond tables, are typically going to be pool halls, and most of the work that I do is not going to be in a pool hall. Most of the work that I do is for homeowners. It's not for pool halls or bar rooms or anything like that. Although I will tell you, I do have one customer that's down in the French Quarter in New Orleans. It's a bar that's down there, and the bar owner routinely has me go out there and recover his coin-operated table. And it's usually fun, except when your truck gets towed, like it did the last time, and it ends up costing you more money to get your truck back from the city than what you actually made on the job. So that's no fun. But that's another job. I'll probably end up doing a video on that one as well, since that's a coin-operated table, and coin-operated tables do get they get recovered different than home tables. They are completely different. And I will say this, that most of the coin-operated tables I run across, at least in the city here, the upholstery work is terrible on them. Sorry, guys. If you're one of the guys here in the New Orleans area and, you're watching this and you do coin-operated tables, sorry, guys, I haven't been impressed with most of the coin-operated table work that I've seen. I am very particular when it comes to tables. Most of the time, when I'm dealing with a table, a Brunswick table like this one, or some of the Olhausen tables out there, the way that they cut their slate for the pockets lends itself very well to not having to have to put any kind of pocket liners in there behind the cloth. Usually, I don't even have to on the corner pockets. Usually, I don't even have to put any kind of relief cuts in there. I can usually just bend the cloth the way that I want it, and it comes out perfect every time. Now, some of the older tables that have a smaller radius cut for the pockets, those you typically do have to cut release cuts, and I'm really glad that a lot of the manufacturers have gone to this wider cut for their slates. Makes for a nicer presentation, nicer way of doing the upholstery work on here. Now, unfortunately, on side pockets, there really isn't much you can do about it. You kind of have to do release cuts. And again, I'm going back with this particular table that we're working on here. I don't have much of a choice. I have to put it back the way that it came off. I can't cut those off of there and restretch it. So it all has to go back exactly the same way. If we were replacing the cloth on here, I probably would have done this. I would have done the cloth differently, but again, we're not replacing the cloth on here. So we're stuck with what the last guy did. But where necessary and where possible, I will come back in and trim up nasty bits of cloth that the last guy left. So I think we're just about done with the cloth on here. And I'll thank David for playing cameraman on this while I get the pockets done, while I get all the cloth done on the table. Trim off those extra little bits of cloth. right, and that's it for installing the cloth on here. Let's get that camera plugged back up. So while I'm taking care of the camera, David's going to go around and pick up all the scrap bits of cloth on the table. I'll get my staple gun out of the way. And I'll wipe the sweat off of my brow because it was kind of warm in that house. I told you we're here in New Orleans, and you know it's supposed to be fall, but it's still pretty warm outside. I think it's like today. Take today for example. I think it was 85, 82, 85 degrees, and you know, here we are in the middle of November. It's just not nice. It's not right. All right, so David's going to go through now, and I think I tighten up the shot here. You know, all of the staples that were in the table. All of the staples that were in the pockets. David's going to go through and clean up all those staples out of the pockets. It's always good to work with clean leather. It's real easy to cut yourself on those staples, so if at all possible, clean it all up, get those old staples out of there. There we go. We might even tighten up a little more. Now, speaking about pockets, another customer of mine gave me an old set of pockets. They just replaced the pockets on their table, and they gave me the old set of pockets from their table. And I know some of you guys have come here from other channels and that do work on shoes and do work on leather work and stuff like that. I'm actually considering doing a video where I restore a set of pockets. And is that something you guys would be interested in watching me do, is make a new set of pockets for a table? Let me know. Let me know in the comments below. I'm thinking about doing it, but there's no interest in it. Why bother? Yes, David, those are hands. And yes, by the way, yes, David does. He is missing a few fingers on one hand. He's originally from the David is originally from the Philippines. So he's half Filipino, which I guess makes him half Asian. And yes, he is missing fingers on his hands. He was born that way. So I'm kind of I've got my quota on both ends. It's just the two of us that work. So 50% of my employees are disabled and 50% of my employees are minorities. So I think we got it covered there. I'm covered on both fronts, minorities and disabled. Not to mention he's one of my best friends. So he and I get along. I think I said this earlier. He and I get along very well for the most part. Now our pockets are ready, and in just a few minutes here, I think I zoom back out and we'll get started assembling the rails, the pockets and the rails. I think David's going to start laying out our rails now. No, not yet. You're not ready to yet, David? I guess he had something else he had to do. Oh, let's sweep down the table. I must have gone outside for something. So finish getting it swept down. I don't know. I guess he's waiting for me to come back in or something. But normally this is about the point where he'd start laying out the rails and getting those ready for assembly. Yep, there he goes. Now, here's the point where you want to take a look at the room itself and start looking at the end of the room where the head rail is, the end of the room where the foot rail is, your two ends of the table. You want to take a look at the room. You want to determine what you have on each side, because it's fairly common when you go to break that the cue ball will fly off the table. So you want to look at what's beyond the table on both ends and look for breakables. If you notice on one end of the table there was a window. On the other end of the table, don't know if you saw it or not, but all there was a stairwell. So that direction where the stairwell is a good direction to break towards, okay? So we set it up to where the head rail goes on the opposite end. That's the rail with the nameplate on it. And again, just like it was with the disassemble video, we're gonna assemble this in two separate halves and put it back together, and then install that one additional rail bolt or pocket bolt in there. So we didn't set this up in such a way that the customer would be breaking towards that window. If the ball flew off, hits the window, it could shatter the window. It may take, a couple of days for them to get that window repaired. So the better option would be have them break in the other direction. I didn't even bother asking the customer if that's the way they wanted to break. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever been wrong in which direction to break towards. There's a lot of times where there's a television in the room somewhere. Usually it'll be on one end of the table or the other end of the table. You always want to break away from the television, away from electronics. If you've got a kitchen on one side or a dining room and there's a lot of glass, you want to break away from that. So, and this particular house was no exception. So we had them breaking away from the window. Now, if you're dealing with a table with pockets that have tassels on them like this one does, you want to make sure that your tassels are pulled back away from the side of the pocket. Don't get them pinched between the rail and the pocket. You'll see me doing that here in just a minute. Make sure that your tassels are in the correct spot and not being pinched, because they're a pain to get back out of there. If you do happen to pinch them in place in between the pocket and the rail, those tassels are a pain to get back off. Most of the time you have to take the rail back off again and remove that tassel from there. And when it comes to tightening down these bolts, you don't want to overkill it. It is entirely possible, if for whatever reason you've got a pocket bolt that's a little bit too long, the drillings on those arms of the pockets where the bolt goes through. The drillings there go clean through that pocket. So if your bolt happens to be too long, it'll go all the way through that drilling. And it will break out your rail on the top side. So when you go to tighten down that bolt, if it goes too far, it will bust out the wood on the top side of the rail. So you want to be a little careful that you don't over tighten these. As soon as you start, if you're using an impact, as soon as it starts binding up, maybe just go a couple of extra bumps with the impact, and that's about it. You don't want to take a chance on breaking anything. So once our pockets are in, we'll take our threaded rods and go ahead and get those started all the way around the table. And again, this is one of those instances where you really all you want to do is just get a couple of quick turns on it. You don't want to bottom out those threaded rods. You don't want to screw them in too far. Just a couple of quick turns just to get them in. And then this is where it takes coordination. You got to flip the rail assembly at the exact same time. Again, if one guy goes to move too fast, another guy's moving too slow, you can crack the rails. Simple as that. So once the rails are flipped over, you go around and make sure that there's none of the leather is getting pinched between the slate and the rail itself. None of that pocket leather. Get the other side on. And again, make sure that there's no leather pinching, because if you tighten down those bolts and the leather is pinching, well, it just means you gotta loosen them back up again. So David is going to go in now, and he's going to put our second bolt in for our pocket. He's going to do that with the other side as well. And that's while I'm busy going around and putting out our washers and the nuts. David's left-handed and I'm right-handed, so usually we both start right there in one corner and we'll start working our way around the table. And 99% of the time, by the time I'm done I'll get 4 rails done by the time he gets 2. Don't know why it works that way. He might get 2 rails plus one bolt. I don't know what I'm saying there, but apparently it was really important. I think I was talking with the customer. Don't know what I was saying. But I was sure animated. Yeah, sometimes I think this is like a competition for he and I, just to see who can get done with doing the bolts in there faster, me or him. Usually it's me. Alright, so the next thing I like to do, it's time now to bolt down the rails, get them snugged up. So what I'll do is I'll push my rails together. I'll push my end rail there, tighten them down, go around to the other end, and just kind of snug it up just to make sure. So I'll push it in just to snug it, make sure that everything is lined up good, and go ahead and tighten down that end. And then we'll use a 4-foot level right up against the rails to make sure that we're nice and straight in line. And David's going to hold it in place. Now another trick here is that you can do your bolt closest to your corner pockets, and that'll put a little bit of tension on it and cause your rail to stay put. It won't move, but you can actually nudge it. It's not so tight that it won't move if you want it to, but it's not so loose that it's just flopping around. So usually what I'll do is I'll tighten up my 2 end bolts closest to my my corner pockets, set the rails where I want them, and then come back and tighten up the other 4. So there we go. Our rails are now secured. They're all nice and straight. No more need for the impact. We're done with that. And then I'm going to take out my duct tape and my string. And I know what you're saying. What's the duct tape and the string for? Well, you'll find out. So we go to the head rail, and we're going to cross that string right smack in the middle of the nameplate. And we'll take a piece of duct tape, and we're going to tape the string right down to the rail, lining it up right in the middle of that nameplate. Bring our string line down, and now we're going to go to the middle diamond on the opposing rail, on our foot rail. Grab us another piece of duct tape, pull our string line taut. We're going to go right in the middle of that diamond and tape it into place. And then we'll go off to the side and go to our second diamond. Grab another piece of duct tape. We're going to line that up right smack in the middle of that diamond and tape it in place. And then one more time on the opposite side on the second diamond. And we're going to tape that in place. Okay, so where those 2 lines intersect is where our dot goes. That's where you're going to rack. So I'll go over to and even though this is an old pool table, an old cloth that's on the table, and they've lost the spot somewhere along the way, we'll put a brand new one on there. I always carry spares with me. And this is a peel and stick one. And as you can see, while I'm busy doing that, David's going to go around the table and he's going to staple up the pockets, which we will get a shot of in just a minute. I think I specifically told him to hold off on doing the last one so that I could show you guys. So we'll peel our spot off and get it lined up exactly right. And I'm looking directly overhead. There we go. And press it down nice and firm. We can pull our duct tape back off. And we'll throw that away in a minute, and then go ahead and put away our string line. I don't know if any of you guys have ever watched anybody else install a pool table. I've heard where customers tell me, oh, you know, the last time I had it moved, it took the guys 5 hours to do it. Well, as you can see, it doesn't take 5 hours to do a pool table. Let's see. Right at the moment, we are currently 1 hour and 33 minutes into this. So now we're going to show you where David's stapling the pockets up to. So his innermost tabs on the pocket, he's going to staple that to the lip on the frame of the table. You want to make sure that you give yourself room for the balls to fall in without it pinching or anything like that. And the other ones, the other two fingers on the pockets, those go stapled to the slate frame. So we leveled the table from head to foot. Now we're going to level it from side to side. So I'm going to get out my machinist's level again. And we're going to test it from side to side. Now this technique for leveling the table, I wouldn't advise doing it for every single table out there, but on this particular one I can, because the frame, the table frame itself has an additional lip there that I can get onto. If it didn't have that additional lip, there's other ways that I would go about leveling it. But since it did have that lip, I can actually lift one side of the table very, very carefully. And I can level out the table from side to side that way. Now, David just went and got us some real thin pieces of wood. And these are like 1/32 of an inch or less. So I'm going to lift up the table here, just the one side, because it's just the one side that needs to be lifted. And David's going to show you exactly where I'm talking about for where to lift from. Can you see it? There we go. That ledge right there, that's where I'm putting my arms on. I'm not lifting from the slate at all. The slate has absolutely zero stress on it. So I lift up the one side of the table, and I'm only lifting it about inch and a half. And then David's going to check our both of our ends of the table. And if there's any minor adjustments that need to be done, which in this case there isn't, we got it on the first shot. And that's it. So we'll go ahead and pick all of our tools up. Usually I'll leave the carpenter's levels out, and let the customers read the table, read the levels using the carpenter's levels. Mainly because I don't want anybody else messing with my machinist level. That thing costs way too much money, and I've broken the vial on it before, and the vial's like $25 to replace the vial. and I certainly don't want somebody dropping it and it getting all screwed up. So we'll go along and we'll sweep off the top of the table one last time. Make sure it's nice and pretty. And this one came out pretty good, even though the cloth itself was about 13 years old. It really did come out halfway decent. So I'm going to go ahead and put the levels back up there as soon as I'm done sweeping, and let the customer walk around the table and move the levels anywhere that they want to. All right, Doug, that's enough. You've swept enough. I tell you, I'm a huge Makita fan. Most all of my tools are Makita. Never once had one break on me. Of course, I'm very easy on my tools anyway. So we'll put our levels down on the table, let the customer come in, and she can go around and she can look at it anywhere she wants, move the levels all around. Can I tell you, she was very happy with the job? No, doesn't quite work that way. Okay. She caught herself. Look, she even looked at herself on camera. It's cool. All right, well, that's it. Start to finish on the job, and well, let's go back over to me. Okay, so that's how you put together a pool table. That is start to finish, and that was a pretty long video, and if you watch the whole video, look, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch it. There's a lot of stuff in it. If you need to, I know that there's a lot of information that I gave you in the video. So what I would suggest is use this video as a reference. If you get to a point where you're not quite sure what to do, come back and watch that section. I'm going to put timestamps in this video. Well, there should be timestamps in the video showing you exactly where to jump to if there's a particular area of the table that's giving you a hard time. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Moving pool tables, doing pool tables, any kind of service work on pool tables, at least moving them it's pretty hard work. And I said this on the last video, on the condensed version of this, that 99% of people that ever touch a pool table to move it or anything, they don't ever want to do this again. It is hard work. It's heavy work. So if you're a little weakling, I'm sorry. If you don't have the muscles and the upper body strength and, well, the lower body strength too, to carry those slates, don't attempt it because you can really hurt yourself. So write me some comments down below. If I missed anything in this video, which I don't think I did, if I missed anything or you have any questions or anything like that, write me a comment down below. And I respond to just about every single comment. I don't necessarily comment back, but I do. If somebody asks me a question, a direct question having to do with pool tables or leatherwork or anything, I will take the time to answer back. And another thing, too, I will leave links down below to all of the tools, or at least the majority of tools that I use for installing pool tables. Trust me, after doing this for 30 years, I've learned the best tools to use to make the job go faster and easier, much less problems. So, again, leave me comments down below, ask me questions. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. By the way, I just reached over 1,000 subscribers. Actually, this morning I was up to like 1,150 subscribers. So to all of you that are just coming to my channel, you guys came over from Preston Soto's channel, The Elegant Oxford. I realize I do a lot of pool table videos here too, but I've been doing pool tables for a very long time, and it's what I know, and it's what I'm passionate about. And I'm also passionate about leatherwork too, but with doing the pool table work, it's something that it's just like with Preston, with doing shoes, doing the shoe shine, and with Steve Dudoklian from Beto's Leatherworks. That's their passion, and they have their channels centered around that. And it's not to say that you go on Preston's channel and you might see something completely different than a shoe shine. I know he's done some reviews of some of my products, and you go onto Steve's channel with Beto's Leatherworks, and he'll have other types of projects that he'll show you as well. And that's kind of what I'm doing here too. I realize that a lot of you guys come here because you like the leatherwork stuff, but I would hope that you come because you just have an appreciation for fine craftsmanship, whether that be with leatherwork or shoes, or in my case, pool tables, or anything. I would hope that you're here because you have an appreciation for fine craftsmanship, and that's what I want to deliver to you. So anyway, we'll catch you on the next video. Again, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button. Hit the notifications button too. I have some other videos that are coming up that it's a series of videos. It's about an outdoor pool table that has quite a bit of work that needs to be done on it. So, that's one that you probably won't want to miss. If you want to see something that's kind of unusual, well, outdoor pool tables are unusual. So anyway, we'll see you on the next video, and y'all take care.